Hello, welcome to my attic. Sorry if it is echoey. There is subfloor and then ceiling. So I'd like to get into a bit of summary about the Camp Nanowrimo stuff. It is pretty generally applied as just an exploration in writing and trying to become a better writer. So I'll start out with a general explanation of what ended up being my goal during Camp Nanowrimo. I wanted to follow a 30-day prompt list that was initially intended and used for photography, and I wanted to complete the 30 within the month, aiming for doing about one a day. I started out working on my novel for Camp Nanowrimo, so the initial, I don't know how far I got, week or a couple weeks, the prompts were not the focus, they were like the fun aside. And so I think that's kind of interesting as we see the progression of when they became the important thing to work on. Some of the idea behind doing these prompts and writing something unrelated to a novel or a project or anything like that is to see what the tendencies are for writing, what I would typically gravitate towards, and some of the things that I might want to work on. So I'm going to talk about the first 15 days, and I'll also be putting up the sketches and the photographs that were also using the same prompt list. I only have sketches or drawings for 15 of the prompts, so I think I'll just go through the first 15 prompts, and then we'll have a nice cozy wrap-up of 16 through 30 in some later time, talking about the details of them. It gets very interesting. I'll just be honest, I was very interested in the quantity that I started writing and the subject matter and how I was writing it. So the first prompt was leaf. For this one, I did a little bit of if I were an ant on a leaf, and it's kind of has a theme of exploration. It was 256 words, first person, as if you're the ant, and present tense, and it was fiction. I'm happy with it as the first prompt, but it's not like the best thing. It's kind of, I feel like it's a little bit uninspired, but at the time it was like, I was like, whoa, I'm back in the groove, baby. After having tried to work on this novel that was not going well. So the second prompt was favorite color, and for this one I'm actually really happy with what I wrote. I thought I found such a gem with this one. It's about this older woman who is doing some embroidery work, and she has lost her husband at some point in the past. And so it deals with themes of loss and aging. It was 287 words, told third person, present tense, and was fiction. I'm looking at this clipboard, by the way, in case you were curious. And this one I kept building on during the month in my brain. And so I'll get to that, but I did write a story over this weekend, and it's inspired by the character that's in prompt number 2. So prompt number 3 was weather, and this one I wrote about there a while back. There was a red flag warning. I live in Northern California, where there's been some pretty terrible wildfires, So especially in like the past like 2 or 3 years, it's been really horrible. So there was a red flag warning, and of course there was a fire. So that was just about fear of fire specifically. It was a short one, only 190 words, first person, present tense, and it was nonfiction. Prompt number 4 is on the wall, which is kind of an interesting prompt. And I was heavily inspired by my photo for this prompt. It has to do with creation, like creating all of these sewn and knit and embroidered and crocheted and all that. All of the stuff that's hanging on my wall in the downstairs little office that I have, that's all stuff that I made. And so it kind of has to do with using like those creative energies to kind of get through things when I was in college. This one's another really short one, 143 words, first person, present tense, and it's a nonfiction / essay type piece. Number 5 was sunglasses. I wrote that the theme was growing up. I'm not really sure. I think that must mean like spanning from college to adulthood, like true adulthood. Because this is about the summer between graduating from my master's program and moving in with my fiance and, you know, the time before I got a job. So that was 156 words, first person, past tense, and was nonfiction. 6 was dot. This is inspired by a wedding that I went to where there was a ladybug in one of the bridesmaids' hair, and the photo that I took for Dot was of a ladybug. So I was like, whoa, perfect, I'll write about this. So it's kind of about like, why is that ladybug at this wedding? Which is, I think, something that would be really fun to explore later, but I'm not quite sure how to yet. So that's 161 words, first person, past tense, and kind of like a melding of fiction and nonfiction. Number 7 was water. The theme is basically misogyny, and it is 282 words, first person, present tense, and it's kind of like a melding of fiction and nonfiction. Number 8 was childhood. And weirdly enough, reading this back, it had a lot to do with like change and death. I was really pleased with how this read when I went through it later. I thought it was a really interesting kind of summary of unrelated events that kind of made this weird version of my childhood. I thought that was very interesting. It was 214 words, first person, past tense, and nonfiction. I really, really enjoyed that one. And I think the picture that I drew for this, or that I painted for this, actually encapsulates the feeling of that quite well. Number 9 is macro. I think that's a pretty interesting prompt for writing, honestly. A lot of the writing inspiration came from the photograph that I took for this piece. The photograph is of the flower on the top of a weed. This weed is called bristly ox tongue. I learned so much about plants during this whole month of writing. I really dove into some research about what different weeds were called and what different like local plants were called, and even beyond that, like what type of garden plants were called. I was really interested in that as like a theme. The theme for this one was change/death. I don't know, I find that like the theme of change and the theme of, well, if death is happening, then change is happening. And this is basically all about pulling weeds and how you have to be really close to the weeds that you're pulling. So you learn a lot about them as you are sentencing them to death. And I think that concept is really interesting. This was 224 words. Second person, it's like saying what you feel when you pull weeds, and it's present tense, nonfiction / essay. Prompt 10 is upside down. I thought this was an interesting one. It's about a girl who is remembering that when she was in, I think, like grade school, there was a boy who saw everything upside down. And it's kind of a fun way to represent it, because I think if you saw everything upside down, you would still like say that the ceiling is up and the ground is down. But this is like, you know, the ceiling is down and the ground is up. And it was just kind of like wordplay really throughout the whole thing, coming up with different scenarios with where things would go into different directions. And then, yeah, it has a theme of perspective because of, you know, flipping how you view things, and also death because of the very end. And it's first person, past, and fiction. I'm dealing with a lot of themes of death throughout this because I experienced the loss of a dear family member this month, or I guess the month before. So it was very, very fresh. Number 11 is about jewelry, or the prompt is jewelry. I go through the items of jewelry that my fiance has given me while we've been dating, and it's kind of just like a nonfiction essay. This was 445 words. I had a lot to talk about. First person and past tense. Number 12 was flower, kind of about the theme of utility, because I was discovering about myself that the plants that I was planting were very utilitarian. Like when I went out to go make a flower garden, I bought rosemary, and what I wanted was I wanted to get lavender, and both of those are kind of utilitarian. And then I also got mint, and I got one little like combo pack of flowers that was like the one non-utilitarian flower that I got. So that's what that's about. This was 324 words, first person, past tense, nonfiction. Number 13 was the prompt shadow, and this is kind of about fear. We had this big pile of wood in our backyard for quite a long time, and I was like, there's gonna be some fucking snake or spider or something terrifying in there. And then also our dog would like to go over there, but some of the wood had nails in it, so we were always like, you know, vigilant that she wasn't gonna hurt herself. The wood pile is gone now, which is great. It was not when I had written about it. We found that there was probably a rat living under it, and I also heard that when Matt took one of the boards off of the pile, it was just like coated in earwigs, which is disgusting. So that was 229 words, first person, present, and fiction. The first person point of view was actually from like the element of fear that was embodied in the boards, which is kind of interesting. Prompt number 14 is red, white, and blue. And the photo that I took for this in the previous month was of a little bit of a cloudy sky with our bottle brush tree. So that's kind of the thought. And then I took the theme as like, you know, America. And it's interesting, I think at the time that I was at this prompt, I had also just done a Skillshare class about how to make a zine, because I'm interested in turning this into a zine. I put out on my Bookstagram account in like one of my stories like a thing where you could submit answers, and I was like, what do you think about America, or like what is one thing that you could think of to improve America? And I got absolutely no responses, which is kind of interesting because I usually get some responses on some things. So I was thinking of turning that into a zine. So anyway, I just thought about like what America means to me and what the United States means to me. So that was the theme of home, basically, because the United States is my home. And it was 279 words, first person, present tense, and it was like a nonfiction / essay. Sorry, Clover's barking because Matt is getting delivered some Indian food. Prompt number 15 is backyard, and it has the theme of love and family. This is actually about Matt's best friend's parents are moving from the area, so we're losing like one of our home bases of like a strong family figure. So they will be leaving, and the backyard element is that they just have this beautiful backyard, and I want to have something that's like half as good as that. So it's kind of about that. It's first person, present tense, and nonfiction. So the first story, the only story that I have written so far that uses what I've seen from the prompts is something that I've been calling Garden Day. I finished it this morning. It's 2,232 words, and it is about change / death, or like loss. And it is third person, present tense, and it is fiction. It really uses the prompt number 2, the one about the old woman who's doing the embroidery. I'm pretty sure I just incorporate that entire chunk into the story. And it also uses prompt number 9, the macro, about pulling weeds, and prompt number 12 about like planting flowers. So I learned a lot about perennials, different types of perennials, and yeah, the kind of concept about this story is that there's a woman who has lost her husband several years like previous to this, and her grandniece comes and visits her on the anniversary of her husband's death. No, wedding anniversary, sorry. Because the husband had gotten her a flower, like a new flower to plant in the yard every wedding anniversary. So this niece is carrying through this tradition. So that's what that story is about. I'm pretty happy with it. I really like how it has ended. It's interesting because for short stories, there's so much that's not like in the plot, but just like the world and the idea of the thing, I guess, if that makes sense. But I really tried to work on characters to make a character that was, that you thought could be a person, and I really worked on, I guess, having this in the back of my mind for a long time and trying to figure out, you know, what does the house look like? What does the world look like? What does the yard look like? What is the relationship between the two? And really go beyond the concept of the piece before writing it, and try to flesh out as much as possible in my head in quiet times. I've been allowing myself a lot more quiet times without like watching videos or listening to podcasts and stuff like that to do that type of work. So that's been my experience so far. I'll talk about the other 15 prompts in a different video. I think that one will be very interesting, and hopefully by then I also will have an extended full-length story inspired by one or two or more of the prompts from that subset as well. So I hope you enjoyed this, and thank you for watching.